Well, hey, everybody, welcome to the Seeing Ability podcast, where we're having a conversation about the world of people with disabilities. And that means we're going to be talking to a variety of folks. In some cases, it's adults who grew up with a disability, parents who are or have raised kids with a disability, and a lot of individuals that support that community. So that's folks in healthcare, folks in education, and in nonprofits. And I'm really excited today because this is one of our nonprofit spotlight episodes. I think you're going to love listening to these ladies share their insights. We've got the founder of a nonprofit that you're going to learn about later, as well as kind of a disability advocate who, when she heard this nonprofit was getting ready to form, it didn't take her but a moment to step in, and she's got an affinity to this world. So Miranda and Sam, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
You guys did that in unison. That's pretty good. Did you practice that?
No, but we're very excited to be here.
So before we jump into like your insights on the journey, I always love to do the fast four for my listeners. They know just to kind of connect to you guys on a personal level, have folks get to know you. Now we're lucky enough that the fast four is brought to us by my friends at Reliable Tech Help. So for all your tech needs, call them at 502-797-7399. That's tech with a K, not a CH. So the fast four, here we go. We'll start with you, Sam, and then go to Miranda. Favorite food?
Seafood.
Seafood?
Mine would be hibachi.
Okay, very good. Okay, we'll stay with you, Miranda. We'll go opposite order each time. What about a favorite TV show or a book you're into right now?
I'm a big fan of the Chicago series. So there is Chicago Fire, Chicago PD, Chicago Med, all by the same writer, Dick Wolf, of who was previously and still going on for a long time of Law and Order. So I transitioned over and stuck with the Chicago series.
The Chicago franchise. Okay.
Yeah.
Sam, how about you?
She actually took mine, but I'm going to copy off of her. I also love FBI and FBI International from Dick Wolf. I love those series, so it's really, really good too.
Okay, very good. All right. So Sam, if we were to look at your playlist, what kind of music would we find?
Smooth Jazz All Stars is one.
Okay, there you go. That's one that I do not hear that often. I love it. Okay, Miranda, how about you?
Well, I teach a fitness program called Zumba, and what is really, really popular right now, where you travel with the teaching and global music, is Afro beats. So anything that is Caribbean flair, African flair, you'll probably see that, and it's transitioned into the U.S. through WizKid and some other Afrobeat artists.
And this must contribute in part to your high energy level, fitness, this love of fitness. I love it. Okay. And then last but not least, Miranda, for you, what is an item on your travel bucket list?
Well, I have not been on a cruise for a while, but I would love to do either a Hawaii or Alaskan cruise.
I'm going to think there's a lot of people listening that would agree. Both of those are pretty good. Sam, how about you?
I'm going to be a nerd with this one. I want to go to Rome and visit all the art cathedrals.
Okay, art cathedrals in Rome. Well, again, thank you guys. Thank you, ladies, for being here. Let's start out where this journey begins for a lot of parents, especially, and that's the topic of acceptance. You know, the idea that life sort of throws you a curveball. If you have a child that gets a diagnosis or is born with complications, way different than I've never met a person that went to Target, registered for gifts, and one of the things on the list was a walker or a wheelchair, right? So Sam, tell us, the folks haven't met you, tell us a little bit about what brought you into this world, about your son and your family, and what was your journey like with having a diagnosis and having been put on a different path early on?
So Trayson's birth was a little complicated. We went into his delivery not knowing that he would be born. I had to be induced because he had no fetal movement. So they had to induce me because they didn't think he was going to make it. We went into the hospital. They admitted me. It was January the 26th. They run tests and everything. And then finally he was born on January the 28th, and he came out, he cried. So I knew he was okay, but I didn't realize like if there was anything else wrong. They my husband went with him to the nursery. They took him out. It was that type of thing, I guess, to just make sure everything was okay. But when he was born and they brought him back and I looked at him, I knew something was different. I was in denial for a long time. I just kept, watching him. He was not a very affectionate baby, so that was very hard for me. I wondered, like, what I did wrong. What am I doing wrong? Like, is it me? What can I do? The doctor's like, it's just normal. He may just not, just take it one day at a time. Well, postpartum depression is very bad. And when your child is not affectionate and you don't know why, because he's an infant, he can't tell you why he doesn't want to be touched.
Right.
It makes you start doubting yourself as a parent.
Mhm.
So I just kept watching him, and as milestones, we weren't hitting milestones. We were very delayed. And getting there, finally, I was like, listen, I know something's wrong. Something's not right. I said, I want to know. I said, I've done some research. I said, I think it's possible that he has autism. And his pediatrician was like, I think you're probably right. And so we started talking about therapies and where we could go to get diagnosis and like what our next step were. I don't think the initial waves of it happening to us really hit me until they said he is on the autism spectrum. And I
Mhm.
think at that moment, I honestly felt like I was in the middle of the ocean drowning.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I was also thankful because I wasn't supposed to have him according to doctors. So if autism was all that he had, I was blessed with that. And I just learned to navigate the waters a little differently than I had previous. So navigating them was different. But I'm thankful for where I am on this journey with him.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we'll talk about navigating them a little bit later because that's part in what led you to obviously forming your own nonprofit. So, what advice would you have for parents on getting through that initial stage, that shock, that denial, that disbelief, to honor those emotions, to kind of process through them, but then also be to a place where you can come out on the other side and figure out what's next? What advice would you give? I know now you to work with a lot of parents.
For me, I struggled really bad. And I'm not afraid to admit that now. Before I was like, what am I going to do? I was scared more than anything for me and for him because the world can be mean. And I just didn't know what if the world was ready for him. And I wanted to learn to navigate for him and be a voice for him because I didn't know if he was going to have a voice of his own. So I
Mhm.
wanted to make sure that I could work through being the scared, hiding my emotions from everybody. For a while I did that. And then I was like, no, I'm not. I used to be embarrassed when we would be out in public and he would scream or have a meltdown or rock. And now I'm just like, hey, it is what it is. If you don't like it, it's fine. And it's, it brings more awareness to you because unless it's happening to you, you don't really understand the emotions that go with it. Because being a parent with a child that has special needs comes with a whole lot more of emotions of being scared, worrying, what's going to happen to them when you're gone. Just a lot of other emotions come with it. I mean, those, of course, you have those as a parent in general, but when you have a child with special needs, no one is going to care for them or love them like you do. And that was one of the biggest ones I had to come to terms with. The acceptance part was a little easier for me, I think, because I wasn't supposed to have him.
Mm.
So accepting, okay, he's autistic. Okay, well, that's fine. We can navigate it. It's going to be hard, but it's not something that I'm not up for. And I think a lot of the times parents feel embarrassed or what did I do wrong? Or they blame themselves for their child being autistic. And that's not something for them to blame themselves for.
Mhm.
Um, I always say it's Trayson's world and I'm just living in it. He has taught me to appreciate the very smallest things in life. And I am beyond grateful for him for that.
Yeah, that's really powerful that parents have all these feelings, and then on top of that, they feel guilty for having them, you know. And like you said, that guilt is really common. Now, Miranda, you've been around this world when were growing up? I know you had a relative in the family. I know your mom is involved in the world of special needs education. What have you seen for families kind of grasping with this different path and figuring out how to move on from it?
Well, I can say that I experienced it, with the development when it transitions into a young adult and a teenager. From
Sure.
that perspective, I saw a lot of families trying to navigate what extracurricular activities. Is my child ready to socialization? Was a really strong piece that I can see my mother advocated for the students that she engaged in. Um, I I found that I was more appreciative through my mother's working at the school. It sometimes when I first got there, thought, oh gosh, I'm going to see her every day in the hallway. But then I've realized like the responsibility that I have as a student with the students that she takes care of to assure that there's a safe space for them. So I was proud. I started out with this tidbit of like, oh, here's my mom at my school. But then it became just seeing her in the hallway, seeing students that graduated, that we would run into them in the stores and they would just say, thank you so much. Because of you, now I have a job, and it's not much, but it's my independency. I really saw where my mom helped with those soft skills that just when you start getting and transitioning into high school, that she didn't let anyone feel that they were going to be left behind.
Yeah, I love that. And that's a really good transition in terms of that, what kids end up doing, because beyond that initial kind of shocking stage when they're born and things are different, to the world of expectations. When you're a parent, I always like to say there's nothing more humbling than being a parent. But when you're a parent, there's a real spectrum of the way we parent with our kids, and having them learn by doing, having them even learn by failing. So managing the kind of spectrums, put on the one end, you've got that over exaggerated helicopter parent. And on the other end, it's like, oh, they'll figure it out. Let them learn on their own. Then you throw into the mix a kid with a disability that's facing extra challenges. And it can kind of alter as a parent how much we do or don't step in. It can even be that way for aunts, uncles, grandparents, caregivers. For you, Sam, what was that like for you? What was your journey like in terms of expectations for Trayson, and what did you learn through that process?
I'm not gonna lie. At first, I was a helicopter mom, real bad. Um, and then I was like, how am I gonna let him figure out who he is if I don't let him do some of these things on his own? Um,
Mm,
I realized quickly with him, sounds and textures was something that we had to navigate a little differently. Um, just with the sensory issues. But once we started figuring those things out, I started letting him do things on his own, trying to let him say, oh, okay, I don't like this. Or he would shake his head, no, like I'm not, that's not what I want. I think it's you you get a gut feeling like you let him do it or don't, or that type of thing. And with him, I got a lot of help from therapy. His therapists have been wonderful. They've helped me so much on this journey with him. Um, and I've asked for a lot of advice, like, what do I do if this happens? What do I do if this happens? And then the advice they gave me, I just learned to tweak it to work with Trayson and what works best with him. So I think it's just you will start out as a helicopter parent because you are afraid of everything in the world that's going to happen, or they cannot handle it or whatever. But I've also learned that they're phenomenally smart and gifted and they can do so many amazing things on their own. We just have to let them do that. And I've learned that Trayson has his own expectations for himself and he's just 6. So he wants to try to do things on his own, or different things like that. And sometimes you just have to let them, as my husband tells me, you just got to let him go, let him try it. So I'm getting better, but I've still a semi helicopter mom at times.
you're a confessed former helicopter parent.
Yes,
I
yes, I
like that. I
am.
like that. So what's an example of something that probably in the past you would step in and do for him, and then when you forced yourself to sit on your hands, you were surprised by the fact that he could do it? Give us an example.
So with Trayson, the texture things is huge with us. So before I would always do his socks and stuff for him. And I finally was like, okay, I probably need to let him do it on his own. So I actually bought a pair of socks that had the right, the R and the L on one side. And he's very visual. So I was like, okay, if I can let him learn to do this, then we'll see how it goes. At first we struggled because he was struggling with it. I was like, here, let me help. And then I was like, no, 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 you got it. So it was just in that time, it took us a long time to get there. But now
Mhm.
he can put his socks on by himself. So I'm like, it took us probably 6 months, but we got there. And a lot of, I've got to like restrain myself because I would go to help, but I've gotten better.
Wow. Maybe we need to invent something that can tie your hands up as a parent so you can't step in, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And for you, Miranda, you've been around, like you said, relatives, kids that your mom worked with. What do you think is the lesson on sometimes the how society can look at the potential for a kid with a disability and maybe limit or not limit what we think they're capable of?
The one thing that I've really truly gained, and I think to see my mom over time is the patience that families, that educators need to have when you are looking at tasks that you want to try to see that they can flourish on their own. I can remember my mom just really never being afraid of researching techniques that are out there, never being afraid to don't stop learning. There is trends coming out. There is just things that are helpful based on the situation. So I can remember my mom really learning the art of taking time out, because some students would say, I can't do it anymore. I just I'm overstimulated. My mom has very heightened senses, I believe now, because she really steps in the shoes of that particular student that she is working with. So whether that's they need to set a physical timer, she's setting her phone of, okay, we're taking a 5 minute break, you have done your very best. She has learned the art of, sometimes written needs to be verbally spoken to a student, and they succeed when it's actually the same question that they would read. They cannot focus, but if my mom scribes it, so to speak, to them, they are able to answer the question, and she may have to write it down for them, but that's just another type of way that can have students to be successful. So it just time and time again, I know she says she would finish the job and it's done, but there would be nights that she wouldn't mention any like personal information, but she say, I just know this student can be capable of this, and I'm just going to try to research of what I can do to help them, or what's going to be best for them to do. So I think for families and educators, it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop the learning that you can grow personally and for whoever you're trying to help.
Yeah, I love that. So, Sam, for you, with your own insights from your journey, and then now we're going to talk in a little bit about your nonprofit, but just what you've seen with the families you've been working with, what do you think is the takeaway? What's the advice for parents on how to manage that right level of stepping in, not stepping in, expectations for your kid?
I think again, it's a gut thing. You kind of know when they're ready. I know a lot of time for me, it is, should I let him do this? Or a lot of the times it's, am I ready for him to do this? And I had to take that question out of it a lot because I didn't want to hinder Trayson. And yes, he is autistic, but that doesn't mean that he can't do things. And I actually just had this conversation with the school, is I want to focus on his strengths, not his weaknesses. Yes, we
Mm,
know that sounds and textures and things like that are not his strong suit, but we also know visually he has a photogenic memory. We know that he can learn visually by different learning environments. He can learn. So I want to start focusing on strengths, not weaknesses. And a lot of our parents, they're kind of in that same boat as far as their child can do so many things and they want to let their child do so many things, but they're autistic. Are you sure they can do that? We get that question a lot. Well, are you sure he can do it? Yes. Well, we don't know, but let's let him try. And I think we have to talk about it more. Parents need to feel like their child is included, that they're not being left out, and that they can be heard, because a lot of the times it's feeling that their voice isn't heard or their concerns aren't heard. And that is probably the worst feeling as a parent.
Mm.
And not only that, with my nonprofit, we get that a lot is, with schools or with other things, is we want change to happen, but we're not being heard. And that's the thing that we've got to focus on now is our kids are great. We just are on a different journey. They are amazing human beings and they can do anything. We just have to give them the environment to do so.
I love that. Yeah, and it's so true that if the focus is going to be on, because of the label or the diagnosis or the disability, all the things that, all their shortcomings, all the things they can't do, we might never be able to see all the things they can do, right? And even the things that they're supposed to not be able to do, who knows if those are going to be right, right? Like everybody's different. And so it's like avoiding putting those limitations. And that's true for every, if you think of parenting a typical kid, you might have a fourth grader that wants to be in the NBA. Well, you're not going to say, no, you'll never make it. You're going to encourage their possibilities and they'll figure it out as they go. But sometimes we do that, maybe not that extreme example. We do that for people with disabilities. We kind of define what's possible for them, maybe not the capital P, the small p,
Right.
kind of thing. And maybe that's the lesson there. You talked a little bit about your nonprofit, so that's a great segue. And there's a big part of this journey. Like, what do I do now? And how do I figure out resources and things like that? So I always talked about building your village. And so talk to us a little bit about when you were a young parent those years ago and you got the diagnosis. What was that like for you first? And then second, that probably led to you thinking, there's a gap here. I need to create an organization.
We were handed Trayson's diagnosis and we were in therapy already. So we already had, resources there. But when it came to finding resources in our community, there was very few and far in between. And I was like, why? I know that, we can't be the only family in Lexington with a child that's autistic. Like, what is going on? So I started researching more and more, and I was like, okay, well, there's nothing. And for one, that's very frustrating because I feel like there should be more resources for kids with special needs. And not only kids, but teenagers and adults. I mean, you have adults that need a environment as well. So it was very frustrating. And I just thought about it and thought about it. And I was like, okay, I've got to do something. And if I can change it for us, then it will change for other families. And that's kind of how I got started. It was honestly just an idea. I had not even, if you would have told me a year and a half ago that I would have been running a nonprofit, I would have probably told you were crazy. I worked full time. I had a full-time job. I worked there for 13, 14 years. I didn't plan on leaving. I was going to retire from there, and I always tell people God had a different plan for me. I was meant for this journey, and starting my nonprofit, when I mentioned the post, that's how I came across Miranda, is when I mentioned the post of the idea, she was like, well, I have a space. And I was like, okay, well, I have the space. I have the name. I'm doing it. So we did it. And we have done it for a year and a month now. And it has been the greatest journey I could have ever been on.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about that post. What did you kind of just put it out there to the world? What did you ask or what did you announce?
So we are in a group called Ladies of Lexington.
Okay.
And I made a post about a nonprofit. Would there be a need for a nonprofit for, children with special needs and their families? Where would I find a space for that? And I was flooded with comments. And then Miranda commented and, told me she had the space. So I reached out to her and we met and I told her what I was wanting to do. And we've been on this journey holding strong for the last year and a couple months. So I'm very thankful for her because she's become part of our, like a different world family. I mean, she's, become part of our family, and Trayson has speaking to her. He talks to her all the time. And it's just, our families look forward to seeing both of us everywhere. So it's just been a great a great blessing for us, but for our community, our families that come to these events, they come from all over. My nonprofit doesn't just serve Lexington, Kentucky. We serve statewide. We have families that come from all over Kenton County, Powell County, Clay County. People drive 2.5 hours to come to our sensory events because there's no resources where they live.
Yeah. So Miranda, what was it about Sam's post that just made you jump right in?
Well, so I work here under the University of Kentucky College of Food and Agriculture, Food, Environment, and Agriculture, and we have an extension office. So I'm one of the family consumer science agents here, and I, me and my coworker, we took the place of two ladies that had been here for like 30 years.
Mhm.
And so we have a lot of agents that are fairly new across the county that just have these refreshing ideas. We do focus because we have where we are a nonprofit as well too, where we focus on the accessibility of education and programs,
Mhm.
particularly to underserved, underrepresented populations. And so just from my observance here, I know that this specific and special needs, it's not bound to socioeconomic race. It's affecting what we see from the year that we've been at it together. It's affecting all walks of life, literally. So for me to just be able to provide that and have a like-minded initiative that we always really want to focus on, but actually it's highlighted on our end even more of what education can we now put out there? So
Right.
now we have a curriculum that now we got trained on about understanding disabilities. And I think it really launched from different agents coming up with creativity in through programming at their specific extension office. So it's
Wow.
like Samantha said, it's been a joy. It's been a delight. We take the feedback and we try to see, okay, what's our plan now? What's this? And what's our goal from month to month or 6 months from now? What can now I be able to incorporate? And the nice thing about being under a collegiate level in the university is we get to promote to students like this is a promising field that we
Mhm.
need more help in. That
Wow.
oftentimes students they don't see the career paths or they think they just want to specialize in this, but then they come and they volunteer and they say, wait a minute,
Yep.
this is it rewarding. This is enjoyable. We're right next door to a school for single mothers that has a child care development center. So we've had
Mhm.
sometimes the people from the development center come and volunteer or bring some of their children to our events. So it's
Wow.
been where we've been able to expand our village and our reach just the same with this nonprofit. So it's really just went full circle to help all of us
That's
continue to
fantastic.
grow.
What a natural partnership. So
Yeah.
Sam, tell us, what are some of the kind of events you guys have been able to put on in just over your first year or so?
The first year of events, we do theme events every month. So we've held our Easter event. We done a sensory event in February, which was our first event. We set up craft tables of different sensory crafts, whether it be painting, coloring, Lego blocks. They get to choose whatever craft that they want to do. You don't have to be assigned a certain table. You can go do whatever you are comfortable doing. We actually held an event with Safety City here in Lexington where we had the fire department come out, the police department, they taught the kids about road safety, what to do in an emergency, call 911, different things like that. And we were also able to educate parents in, having signs up, letting, safety responders know, hey, I do have a child that is autistic. They may be nonverbal. They may not respond. They may be combative at times. They may run, different things like that. We've had a Friendsgiving. We've had our Halloween party. We've had superhero party.
Wow.
We do celebrate moms every May. We do Father's Day. In June we celebrate fathers, and then Christmas we had Christmas events. And then in just a couple weeks, we're hosting our second Easter event. So
Wow,
it's
that's
really
exciting.
great.
So what has been some of the feedback from parents when they come and on two levels? I think these kind of activities, there's what it means for the kids, but there's also what it means for the parents to connect with the community. Tell us what about some of the responses you've gotten.
Um, we've had uh, we've had so much feedback. We've had parents, thank you so much. This is needed. You've created our own community for us. This is a safe space. I don't feel judged. My son we have a child that comes and he runs barefooted every event, and there's no judgment. No one's looking around wondering. And it's just the safe space of the kids being able to be themselves, whether it's if they have a meltdown, whatever the case may be, no one in that room is judging one another. And the parents are building relationships with other parents. I've met other parents. We now are invited to each other's kids' birthday parties, or, just the other day, one of our moms posted her son got a star student. Like, those are the things that make me so happy, because our kids are thriving, but now we have our own village that we've created, and we're just growing, and the families are appreciative they look forward to these events every month.
We also see the milestones even within the events we've held. When we first had one, we had a mother that said her son was nonverbal.
Yep.
And now she was in tears because he has found a friend that they can't stop talking. They
Oh,
cannot
wow.
talking to one another. And we see it just in the registration checking in. One kid will ask, is so-and-so coming? And they'll just run and hug one another when they embrace and they connect. And then it sparked from our perspective in the community, how can I help?
Yes.
How can I volunteer? What do you need? Without sometimes even asking, we might Samantha may throw a list out there and it's taken care of in less than maybe what we would anticipate, just a deadline. It's already exceeded and met. The sponsors, the connections of auxiliary services like dentistry, screenings, and now just providers that say, I'm focusing more on that of how I can tailor my practice to acknowledge special needs, or I'm tailoring my business to have specific hours that are sensory friendly. We're launching that. We're seeing that more.
So a lot of ripple effects in the community of
Yes.
this. If only we could get you guys to be a little enthusiastic about that. That's the only thing that's lacking. So tell us if folks wanted to learn more about A Different World, what's your website?
adwinc.org.
All right, say that again.
adwinc.org.
Okay, so ADW for A Different World, Inc.org. And then what are some of your needs right now? I mean, like in terms of volunteerism, sponsorships for events, donations, what are your biggest needs?
We are always needing volunteers. Our events are growing. We are getting more and more families. So we need more volunteers to help with all the stations and things like that. So volunteers are always a need. Sponsorships and donations are a huge thing for us, because that's how we throw these events every single month. And we have events all the way scheduled out through the rest of the year. So if you want to sponsor an event or make a donation to an event, you can do so. All of that link is on our website, and you can find all of our social media website or links on there as well.
Okay, great. And we'll find you where on social media, where can they find you?
We are on Facebook and Instagram, and it's A Different World Inc., and it is the same logo that is actually on our website.
Fantastic. Well, I'm always, yeah, exactly. So if we were to bring you guys in, and I know you both do a lot of education and speak to a group of young parents raising kids with some type of disability, I'll go to you first, Miranda, and then you, Sam. What would you say if you had to boil everything down? This is going to be way oversimplified, but kind of like, what are 3 keys to success that you would say to parents who are, again, on this path they didn't maybe expect?
Be open, be intentional, don't stop learning, and be present.
Okay, that was pretty good. Off the cuff. I like it. So Sam, how about you? What would be your big 3?
My big 3 would be patient and open-minded.
Mhm.
Do not set limits on your child. Just because they have a diagnosis, don't limit their abilities. And 3, you are your child's voice. You are going to be their biggest advocate. You are going to be their biggest supporter. And don't lose your voice because society wants you to think otherwise. Be that voice, be loud and be proud. And I'm doing that now.
You've never been accused of being quiet, is that it?
No, not.
I think both of you are amazing. And those of you who are listening, you probably know other nonprofits in your community because we've got listeners all over the country. They're doing amazing work. I'd love to hear about them. I'd love to bring them on this podcast, or families. Maybe you even know some adults who are grew up with a disability, and we'd love their perspective looking back at what influenced their childhood. So I'm always looking for ideas for guests. You can contact me on the Facebook page. We are growing, but we're still a bit of a best kept secret. So we could use your help. Go to the Facebook page, just go to seeingability.org and you can find our Facebook page and you can like us there, follow the Facebook page, and then also forward this to others that you know. We want those parent groups and others who are in this world, even folks that are, like I said, supporting this community. It's a relatively new podcast. And my hopes are kind of always three things. One, when you listen, I want it to be educational. Hopefully, I know you got something out of today where you're like, oh, that's a good idea. I got to write that down. Two, I think we all need stories that motivate us and keep us going and keep us inspired. So, and I know I'm inspired just listening to these ladies today. And then three, we're building our village. And I think I want folks to want to listen to this podcast because we're nodding our heads and these people get us, right? And you want to come here because you don't feel judged and you feel understood. And this is just another layer of your community. So I know you have a lot of choices when it comes to listening. Thanks for tuning in today. Ladies, thanks so much for being here. And Sam, thank you for being that pioneer that just says the world needs to change and I'm just going to go change it.
All right.
Thank you, ladies, so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. We'll see you next time.